so deep in this stuff, it just gets very, very bizarre.
It truly does. And again, the more we look at it, the more we discover. Again, if you had not done the hurricane video, perhaps the stripes never would have appeared. Or the hotel, for that matter. You know, the bizarre stuff. Caller in the 618, you're on the wild card line with Moneybag 73 and Cynthia Sue Larson.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Yes. I have been wondering, have you noticed the Mandela effect within any particular race? Is there more race, Caucasian people seeing this, or black people seeing this, or what? What is it with the ratio? Have you noticed any ratios?
Interesting question, caller. Guys, have you seen any data come in for one way or the other?
I've not looked at that factor. What I have looked at is the Myers-Briggs Interest Inventory, which is a personality. And there is a strong correlation there with people who are considered intuitive feelers. They're, despite being a very small percentage of the general populace. So, for example, I'm an INFJ. That would be the smallest percentage of the general populace at 1.5%. But the INFJs experience 25 or 26%. We're a huge 1/4 of the experiencers of the Mandela effect. And if you take all the NF types together collectively, then it's way out of proportion. Like 1/3 of the population is seeing 2/3 of the Mandela effect shifts. So I haven't looked at race. I haven't seen that as being much. I haven't seen a difference personally. I know just as many people proportionately who are African American or Asian who are experiencing this. And I've had reports from all around the world, from Asia, Africa, everywhere. So I don't think it's exclusively a Caucasian phenomenon, although there are some phrases in Norwegian and other languages having to do with time loops, for example. Vartjeger is an expression that's commonly used in Norway, and then the Danish have an expression, and they're familiar with the phenomenon where people are heard or experienced before they arrive. But there are phenomena in other parts of the planet as well, so it's not just Scandinavians. The Brazilians often see people after they've died. They might knock on the door and join the dinner party as guests, even though they're dead.
Absolute beginners came to Georgetown. They were wearing Harris tweed and pork pie hats. They'd slit your throat and throw you in the gutter. But it's all you can expect from men like that. The bus is bound for Niles Bend Harbor. The ladies wear perfume to scar your nose. And the only way to reach them is to scare them. But of that you know little, I suppose. It's a magical and mystical performance as you perambulate right down the road, with your pockets full of stardust and perfection, and Jesus on your side and in your soul. She had rings on every finger and 10 bracelets, some touched with powers given by a sage. He had contemplated giving her his wristwatch. The time for him had long since gone its way. Of the city he would shuffle, while spinning on his heels and chewing beef. He had promised her he'd be a vegetarian, he could not control his lust for meat. Some say she left the streets for greater glory, but others said that she was big with child. Whatever was the truth, it did not matter. He would hunt her down and cut her with his smile. Last time he was seen was by the pawn shop. He traded 2 gold teeth for a sack of corn, and he would plant it on the outskirts of the city as a warning that he would someday return. He said he never found her and he's still looking. It is said he searches rivers for some sign, but the truth is that he caught her down in Georgetown with a Spaniard who had left his wife behind.
Are you looking for that special musical track that you can call your own? Well, you need to call Red Shed Studios. Ha! That's right. Tom Bayless of Red Shed Studios can work with you to deliver exactly what you're looking for your creative project regarding a custom background soundtrack tailored for you. Reach out to Pickle or Tom Bayless at 920-344-7634. That's 920-344-7634. Red Shed Studios. They'll put the rock in your roll.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Don't you wish that your weekend was longer than just 2 days? Well, if so, then you're in luck, because here on Ripon Common Sense Radio, our weekend begins on Wednesday. Yes, you heard that right. Our weekend kicks off every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, with Dark Wolf's Den, starring yours truly, Jerry the Dark Wolf. But that's where the fun has only just begun. Make sure you come back every Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show, starring AJ the Ripon Rabbit. He dives into the archives of vocal legend Art Bell and brings those stories up to date. So make sure that you spend your extended weekends with the Animals Radio, Jerry the Dark Wolf, and AJ the Ripon Rabbit, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, every Wednesday through Sunday, right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
Live on air, every Wednesday through Sunday nights. For more details, visit us at riponrabbithole.com.
Hello and welcome to the Wolf's Den. I am your host, Dark Wolf. Tonight we're going to talk about those crazy creepy crawlers we call cryptids. What are they? Are they real? Are they not? Why should we even believe them? All that and more tonight on the Wolf's Den. We'll be right back. So what is a cryptid? What in the world could be a cryptid? Well, a cryptid is considered a creature that science says just cannot exist. Like what? Like the Bigfoot. Everybody's heard of the Bigfoot, right? That great big hairy ape-like creature that stalks the Pacific Northwest of the United States. I happen to live in the Pacific Northwest, and I can't count the times I've looked at the den and expected to see Sasquatch just stomping through the lot, stomping down the road. And I only say that half jokingly. I kind of do expect to see him every now and again. But could it be real? Could a creature like that exist? Well, science says no. But there's been a lot of eyewitnesses that would disagree, huh? Tell that to the person who's had boulders thrown at them, right? Or how about the person who's been chased out by a Bigfoot? Tell them they don't exist, huh? Well, there's been multiple times over the history that science has got it really, really wrong. Let's take, for example, the duckbill platypus. Not that I can say I blame them on that one. The duckbill platypus was thought to be an absolute myth. As a matter of fact, English zoologist, let's try that again. Ain't live radio great? English zoologist George Shaw even conceded that he thought it might just be a hoax. And I quote, "On a subject so extraordinary as the present, a degree of skepticism is not only pardonable, but laudable. And I ought perhaps to acknowledge that I almost doubt the testimony of my own eyes." But of course, we all now know that the duckbill platypus is very, very real. Although I gotta admit, if somebody described that creature to me and told me they'd seen it, well, a Dutch colonial officer decided to check it out for himself, named Lieutenant Steen van Hinsbroek. He put together an expedition and headed to Komodo Island, where he caught and killed a 6-foot specimen. He then sent the proof, if you will, back to the Zoological Museum and Botanical Gardens, where they dubbed it Varanus komodensis, the Komodo dragon, another cryptid that science says couldn't exist. Well, guess what? It does. So what about Bigfoot, huh? Could Bigfoot exist? Yeah, I think it could. I mean, is it really so far-fetched to think that an almost human-like creature could survive in caves and maybe find a way to hide from the general population? In the East, I would have believed this would have just been myth myself, but now that I've moved out west and seen how much open land is out here, I gotta say, very feasible to me. Very, very plausible. And another thing, a lot of people talk about how Bigfoot tends to disappear, how it might be connected with the UFOs and things like that, which we'll get into in later episodes. But as far as him disappearing, end quote, well, what if the hair, and this, I'm not the first one to suggest this, I've actually heard this suggested by a couple different researchers. What if the hair of the Bigfoot actually has some property to where when light hits it, it makes it look invisible? It would bend the light around it. That way all the Bigfoot would have to do is turn to the side or perhaps release a chemical into the fur and become, well, for lack of a better word, invisible or cloaked. Is that impossible? Well, maybe, maybe not. Where do you think we get the idea for most of our tech? That'd be from the animal kingdom, of course. But with that aside, back to Bigfoot. I can't help but wonder if dragons, like they used to describe them in medieval times, you know, the fire-breathing ones, not the Komodo dragon. We know that exists. But what about real fire-breathing dragons? They say they haven't found anything in the fossil record. Fine. Maybe. But then again, what about dinosaurs, or what we call dinosaurs? What if they've got the date wrong? Or what they don't have the date wrong? Here's what I'm getting at. To think that a fire-breathing creature could exist probably sounds a little outlandish, right? Follow me here. What if I were to suggest it's not so outlandish? There are different creatures whose bodies produce different chemicals and things, different gases, things like that. As we all know, cows produce a large amount of methane. So let's imagine for just a moment that there was a creature that existed that had a organ that would produce something like, I don't know, sulfur oxide, or I could have my chemistry wrong. I wasn't exactly a chem major by any means. An element that when mixed with oxygen would immediately burn. Well, if there was an organ that produced this within a creature, and the creature, say, belched this gas into the environment out of their mouth, then once the gas hit the oxygen, it would probably burn. This would look like a fire-breathing dragon. Again, it's not all that wild to consider that a creature could have an organ that could produce a chemical like that. At least not in my opinion. So what if the dragon, as we know it, the fire-breathing dragon, did exist? Of course, we don't have a whole lot of proof to suggest that, and there's been no creatures alive today that have that kind of organ, but it's not out of the realm of possibility by any means. Another creature that science said could not exist would be the gorilla. That's right, the gorilla. Today, it's hard to imagine a world in which people don't believe in a gorilla. But it's not so hard to imagine your own skepticism if you were regaled with tales about giant, hairy, savage man-beasts with bad tempers living in the wilds of some faraway place. You know, that's exactly what a Bigfoot would be described as today, wouldn't it? A giant, hairy man-beast that lives in the woods. Just seems to me about the same description. Of course, those are gorillas that we're talking about. But for a long time, Westerners did not believe it. Some attribute the first sighting of a gorilla to Greek explorer Hanno in the 5th century BC. Although today scientists believe he was probably witnessing chimpanzees or baboons, called gorillae, as it happened. Well, as we know, it turns out the gorilla later on would be verified as a real creature. In 1902. Today we know exactly what a gorilla is. But before 1902, they were just a myth, a legend. About sea creatures. The manatee was considered a myth for a very long time. It's well known that the mermaids of ancient mythology were likely inspired by sightings of manatees. Even Christopher Columbus was duped at one point. Writing in his logbook, on the previous day, 8 June 1493, when the admiral went to the Rio del Oro, 80, he said he quite distinctly saw 3 mermaids, which rose well out of the sea. But they are not so beautiful as they are said to be, for their faces had some masculine traits, end quote. Masculine traits? He was seeing a manatee. How you can confuse that with a mermaid, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe. Later, they were discovered to be a real creature, of course. Speaking of sea creatures, what about those cryptids that are still considered to be myth, legend? Creatures like Loch Ness. The Loch Ness Monster, found in, of course, Loch Ness in Ireland. I'm sorry, Scotland. Excuse me. Nessie has a long history herself. Originally being spotted in 1933 with the photographic evidence. And I gotta say, the evidence is quite compelling. It's coming from a person who's not only a paranormal researcher, but also one that tries to debunk everything in order to prove it. I don't see how this picture, this old black and white picture, could be a log or a rock or anything of that nature. How about a seal? No? How about an eel? That's right, an eel. Well, in 2019, scientists said exactly that. Said the Loch Ness Monster was nothing more than an eel. You believe that? That was an eel, ladies and gentlemen. It was the biggest eel on record. Matter of fact, I say we get some environmentalists and creature scientists over there and zoologists, that's the word I'm looking for, and have them find out what's making these eels grow to sizes that look like sea creatures. I just can't buy an eel as being the answer. And I've never seen an eel raise his head up out of the water like a brontosaurus either, which is clearly what is going on in this 1933 photo. But of course, materialist science has it right. They always have it right, except for all those times they got it wrong. But surely Nessie, that's got to be the only cryptid sea creature that exists, correct? Nope. What if I told you there were 3? That's right, there's 3 Nessies. Well, creatures like Nessie, let's be fair here. The Loch Ness in Scotland, they definitely got theirs. What if I told you there was a creature like that in Canada? Right? It's called the Ogopogo. And forgive me if I slaughter this name, but it's from Lake Okanagan in British Columbia, Canada. And again, if I slaughtered that name for those Canadians, I do apologize. This lake monster is pretty much like the Nessie. I can see maybe how this could be something else. The pictures aren't exactly that great on this particular creature. However, there have been many an eyewitness account that said they seen the sea creature in this lake. It's funny how the eyewitness accounts all match. It's one thing I find funny about eyewitness accounts of things. And in the Mandela Effect community, that's very, very important, of course. But when independent people all report the exact same thing, people of very sound mind, very sound body, a lot of these people that see things like this, guys, they're not looking for fame or fortune. They don't even want the experience when they get it. A lot of these people, it scares the wits out of them. That's why I believe a lot of the paranormal case files that I read, the reaction of the witness in question is very important. I'm not saying all are correct. No. There are inconsistencies. There are fake files. Of course there are. That's just the nature of the beast, right? But generally speaking, they say eyewitness accounts aren't that reliable. It amazes me how the unreliable eyewitness accounts all have pretty much the exact same details, especially in paranormal circles. UFOs, gray aliens, they all describe the exact same thing. And generally, they all come back with the same message, as far as abductees go. But again, that's another topic for another show. Back to Ogopogo and the Canadian Loch Nessie. So we've got the Bigfoot. We've got the Loch Ness Monster. Now we've got Ogopogo, the great Ogopogo. Surely that's got to be all the lake monsters, right? Nope, wrong again. There's one in America. Yep, that's right. America couldn't get.
Maybe I'm amazed at the way you love me all the time. Maybe I'm afraid of the way I love you. Maybe I'm amazed at the way you pull me out of time, hold me on a line, and maybe I'm amazed at the way I really need you. Maybe I'm a man, maybe I'm a lonely man who's in the middle of something that he doesn't really understand. Hey woman, maybe you're the only woman.
And chupacabras, which we'll get to shortly, and Tahoe Tessie. That's right, Tahoe Tessie. Tahoe Tessie is a sea creature that's been seen in Lake Tahoe. And I personally have actually interviewed somebody who has seen this creature in person. They said they've seen it multiple times as a child as they grew up on Lake Tahoe. Said they would look out and see her out in the middle of the water just swimming around. Of course, nobody's ever got up close to her. I'm not even sure there's images available. Yeah, I don't think there's even any images available for Tessie. But again, there's been a numerous amount of eyewitness reports that have claimed to see this very same creature that we call Tessie. There's lots of cryptids all over the world. How many of these could be real? How many of these are just things science hasn't verified yet? We've heard a couple examples of those, right? Like the Komodo dragon and the duck-billed platypus. Again, the duck-billed platypus, I gotta say, I wouldn't believe that one either. Or the gorilla. The gorilla, for heaven's sakes, for crying out loud. The gorilla, they said, was a cryptid creature and could not exist. Alas, today we know they do. The giant squid, there's one we found in our lifetime, at least my lifetime. There was always these talks across sailors and the ancient times of all these giant sea monsters. Of course, those had to be myth and legend too. They couldn't be real. Because nothing anybody says can be real unless science says so, right? I think we need to change our paradigm there. How about you guys? I think we need to change it to a paradigm of accepting eyewitness reports and looking into them seriously. Not scoffing and saying it's impossible. That's a word I've learned to hate over time. Impossible. I use it again from time to time myself and find myself not too happy with it. But the giant squid. In my lifetime, they figured out the giant squid is not a cryptid, but actually a real creature, and what tormented sailors for many, many years. These things can get absolutely gargantuan, to the point they could swallow a boat whole with their tentacles, not with their mouth, with their tentacles, and smash it in half. Does that sound crazy? Well, listen to the ancients. I think they knew a lot more than we know today, believe it or not. I think they had answers we're even just now beginning to scratch the surface of. But again, another topic for another show. How about the chupacabra? What is the chupacabra? It originally started in Puerto Rico. It's called the goat sucker. That's what chupacabra stands for, goat sucker. It's said to drain the blood of its victims by the throat. Such a vicious little thing, but not a drop of blood is left. And not a sound either is made during the attack. This one really hits close to home for me because I believe we had a chupacabra in Tennessee. Not only in Tennessee, but on our property. So here's what happened. I was about 13 years old, maybe 14 that time. And my neighbor went to a different county to go to high school. He drove himself. He went to the next county over. Well, I was already home from school and I was playing Nintendo when he came over to my house. He had just gotten home and he hadn't even went to his house yet, came straight to my house and we started playing games. Well, a couple hours passed and he left and went back to his house. Again, this is the first time he's been actually to his house. A couple moments later, he's back at my front door, crying his eyes out. This really struck me as odd because this is a guy that is built. I'm talking about a wrestler on the wrestling team, a huge guy, a manly guy. Not a guy that would be crying in front of you at any given time, unless something was really, really wrong. So me and my neighbor, I guess you would say, the guy that rented from us, went over to check out what was going on. And the scene we found to this day, ladies and gentlemen, I will never, ever forget. Because there were some anomalous things about it that stood out to me. All the geese had been killed. There were bodies strewn across the ground. They had a dog, yes, and the dog had broke its chain that day. But this dog lived around these animals. If they was going to attack, would have done it much sooner than this. It protected the animals, not eat it. Well, the dog had broken its chain this day. So, of course, the assumed thing was the dog killed the animals. But it didn't add up. And to this day, it doesn't add up. And here's why. All these animals that were strewn across the ground, they were all killed by the neck. Every last one of them. And every last one of them had every drop of blood drained. One of the craziest things I ever seen because there wasn't a drop of blood to be found on the ground. You bite into a creature, blood's going to spew 3 or 4 different directions. Watch CSI. They explain it quite a bit. So, where'd the blood go? I have a pile of dead creatures in front of me, and I can't find a drop of blood anywhere. You could say, well, it's soaked into the ground, maybe, but there is no evidence that it was ever there to begin with. But that's only the beginning of the story, I assure you. As we investigated, they have a pond, and around the edge of the pond has, muddy area. Well, in this muddy area, we found a single footprint. And this is one of those things that stood out to me about the case that I'll never forget. The footprint only had 3 claws, 3 pads. I was quite ignorant of animal footprints at the time. So, as a paranormal researcher, of course, I decided to try to prove that it was just a regular creature. Thought I could figure out the mystery. Turned out, I couldn't find a single paw print in the animal tracker book I found that even began to match it. Nothing had 3 claws, 3 pads. Everything had a minimum of 4, everything I could find at the time anyway. A couple years later, this incident has, been filed away in the back of my mind. I'm watching a show called Paranormal Borderline, hosted by Jonathan Frakes. For those who don't know that name, you might recognize him as Will Riker from Star Trek Enterprise, or Number One, as Picard used to call him. But he's hosting a show called Paranormal Borderline. And on the show, they're talking about all these different paranormal cases, from UFOs to ghosts and, everything we would cover on this show here. Well, he brings up this case file about this creature of Spanish lore called the chupacabra. thought, oh, wow, that sounds interesting. And as they described the case, the more they talked, the more I thought, that sounds like what I experienced over here. But it didn't make any sense to me because they said this is Mexico and Puerto Rico. This isn't in the U.S. Well, I found that very odd. What I really found odd was at the very end of the article. They presented this strange footprint that the creature leaves. It's really strange 3-claw, 3-pad footprint. I was blown away. I mean, absolutely mind-boggled. We also had a pond on our property. We lived in kind of an outskirt area, country area of Tennessee. And on our property, like I said, we had a pond just like our neighbors. And I come out one night, my father and sister with me, and we seen this creature at the end of our yard. Very low to the ground, red-eyed, dark, bobtail almost type creature. Very low to the ground. And it darted off into the pond. I can't say I know what it was, and I can't say it wasn't a regular creature, but given that this had happened within days of the initial killing of the animals that I just described to you, I would dare say that I was looking at the same creature. My mother, who did not encounter any of this, only heard about it in story, thought it was insane that this creature couldn't exist, that we were just, blowing things out of proportion. Till she was leaving for work one evening. As she stepped out of the house, she looked down to the ground, and there this creature stood. Again, it wasn't a really tall like a dog or anything like that. It was more low to the ground like a raccoon or a cat. She said it had the red eyes. It just looked funny, like no creature she could recognize. Again, it could have just been something that we just did not recognize. But we grew up in the country. We knew our animals. We know our possums. We know the animals that come through that area. It didn't look like any animal I'd seen. Again, I didn't take a picture. I didn't run up and grab the thing to try to find out. But I find it intriguing. And I really wholeheartedly believe that was a chupacabra encounter, being the paw, the anomalous paw that I kept in the back of my mind that I will never forget, happened to be the paw print of the chupacabra himself. I thought that was very, very intriguing. So I ask you again, are cryptids real? Could they be real? Is science right? Are cryptids just that? Fake? Not real? Could they just be myth, legends, and lore? Or is it possible that maybe, just maybe, like all those other times, science got it just a little bit wrong? What do you guys think? You think they were wrong? Do you think they were right? Could Bigfoot be real? How about Ogopogo or Nessie? Could any of them be real? You be the judge. And that does it for us tonight, folks. We've clawed our way through our first episode. But don't worry, we will be back next week and every week with longer episodes starting Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. This show may be done, but the weekend fun has just begun. Make sure to come back Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central for the Ripon Rabbit Hole Live Show featuring our friend AJ the Ripon Rabbit. If you like this special premiere pilot episode, please let us know either in the comments section over there on Dark Wolf's Den YouTube channel or by making an account on riponrabbithole.com. That is RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. and letting us know in our new show group section that we are proud to announce. We also have a group over there just for show suggestions. So if you have ideas for show topics, make sure you drop us a line and let us know. I'm about to head on over to my favorite hangout, the VIP Backstage Lounge. If you would like to join me for even more conversation, it is absolutely 100% free. You are required to have a cam and mic hooked up, but you can turn them off immediately and use only the text chat once you get in. There are only 12 seats available, so make sure that you head over there pretty quickly before all the seats get taken. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jerry Hicks, the Dark Wolf, and remember always, stay awake, but dare to dream. We'll see you next week in the den on Ripon Common Sense Radio. Don't you touch that dial.
Live on air. Every Wednesday through Sunday nights. For more details, visit us at riponrabbithole.com.
Did you enjoy that special premiere episode of The Dark Wolf's Den? I know I did. If you enjoyed the program this evening, please thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live here at the Ripon Rabbit Hole. I'll be back to continue the weekend tomorrow night, Thursday, May 14th, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, when we dive down the rabbit hole of magnetic opposition. A look at why opposites attract and the magic of magnetics. Have the magnetic poles shifted? We'll ask that and a lot more questions tomorrow night, May 14th. Then Friday night, translate body language is our topic for the 15th of May. What your body language says about you and how to read it in others. Are people reading you, and can you read someone yourself? Then we'll continue through the weekend on Saturday night with Supernaturally Skeptic, a close look at the smoke and mirrors of illusion and when it's important to be skeptical. That's Saturday, May 16th, 2020, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. All shows start at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. We'll cap out the weekend and end Sunday, May 17th, with a close look at the fountains of youth. That's right, a splash into the resources of anti-aging. Is the person that will live forever already alive today? I want to know. And we're going to dive down that rabbit hole and a lot more this weekend together. My top hat's off, and a big shout out to Jerry Hicks for pulling off his premiere episode of Dark Wolf's Den. Put a 1 in the chat room if you enjoyed that. Show him some Ripon Rabbit Hole common sense love. We're going to see a lot more from Jerry as his show increases, progresses, and grows throughout the many weekend starters to come. Like he said, we're going to head on over to the Ripon Rabbit Hole VIP Backstage Lounge, where you can connect with Jerry and all the Ripon Rabbits back there, where the conversation continues. For many of you, the conversation ends here, but for the Ripon Rabbits, it's just beginning. Hop on over to riponrabbithole.com, click on 24/7 Backstage Lounge, enter the VIP Cam Chat area, connect your microphone and camera, and you'll be on your way to endless hours of conversation. The weekend just got a lot longer, folks. We'll be back again tomorrow night with more Common Sense Radio, the Ripon Rabbit Hole.
With a Spaniard who had left his wife behind.
Don't you wish the weekend lasted longer than 2 days? Well, if so, you're in luck. Because here on Ripon Common Sense Radio, our weekend begins on Wednesday. That's right. Make sure you check us out every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central for Dark Wolf's In, starring me, Jerry the Dark Wolf. We discuss the paranormal and try to claw at the truth one episode at a time. Then Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Central, make sure you check out the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show starring AJ the Ripon Rabbit as he digs into the Art Bell archives and brings those stories up to date. So make sure you spend your extended weekend with the animals of radio, Jerry the Dark Wolf and AJ the Ripon Rabbit, right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio.